and welcome to Finextra. I'm Hannah Wallace, and today I'm joined by Todd Latham of Currencycloud, and we're going to be discussing B2B payments. But firstly, Todd, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thanks for being here.
What would you say are some of the challenges businesses operating internationally are facing today?
So actually, if you look at the consumer world before we go to businesses, it's really interesting because companies are falling over themselves to take friction out of that buying experience. But we've not seen that in the business world, especially in cross-border. So if I'm a US company, if I'm a UK customer buying from a US company, then what tends to happen today is I'll get an invoice in US dollars and it's on me to figure out how I'm going to send that money overseas. So all of the friction is put onto the customer. And as we know, overseas payments are difficult, for all sorts of different reasons. So as a business, you don't want that for your customers, but also from a receiving business, you don't want it because actually a lot of payments get lost. They're hard to reconcile. They lose a lot of data in that cross-border process. So actually there's got to be a better way of doing things. And so what we're starting to see is the advent of new technologies which enable companies to create accounts in multiple countries around the world. And there are a few players doing this, but they're typically selling it to businesses themselves. And what Currencycloud are doing is building a global collections product, which basically allows us to offer this service to other payments companies who then in turn want to offer it to their customers.
Okay, and what hurdles might payment businesses expect to face when serving their clients?
So we found out to our cost that it's really difficult to go and do this. And there are three basic things that you need to be able to achieve. The first is you need to be able to open up bank accounts in different countries and actually talk to lots of fintech companies, and they can't even do that within their own countries, let alone in different countries. So that bank relationship is really difficult to go and do. Then you need to build the integration platform into those banks and build all the systems to support that, which is a body of work. And then finally, and perhaps the hardest piece is the regulatory side of it. Because what you're trying to figure out is you've got a customer, say in the UK, who wants to consume a product in Europe and the US. At some point, you've got to ask who's the regulator when you're providing that service. And so constructing the contracts and the safeguarding protocols and the legal framework to support that gets very, very complicated. And that's beyond the means of most small fintech companies.
All right, and following on from that quite nicely, why would you say the B2B payment space is underserved here?
Again, it's really interesting because actually the opportunity is in B2B. So Juniper did a piece of research 2 weeks ago and they reckon the B2B marketplace is $150 trillion a year. That's the flow of money moving between different countries, between businesses. The remittance marketplace, to give you some context, is 500 billion. And everyone's piling in there, right? Everyone's looking at how do you solve consumer to consumer. Yet the real market opportunity is over here. And I think what's interesting about that, and I guess some of the reasons for that are twofold. One is people get it. Like it resonates. I'm a migrant worker and need to send money home to my family. You can feel that story in your heart, and therefore the founder story, the passion that goes with it, I think makes these companies really interesting. And then secondly, it's a relatively simple use case. I am sending you money. Send it, conversion, send it on. It's a very simple process. B2B is a whole different kettle of fish because businesses are complex and they're varied and they're trying to do different things and they have all sorts of different business models and they require enterprise sales, and so it's a very, very different proposition. So I think first of all, the market opportunity is very visible for consumer type products, but also it's much easier to get into, and actually being able to provide a platform that cuts across B2B is an incredibly hard thing to do, as we know.
And finally, do you believe blockchain can help businesses operating internationally?
The interesting thing about blockchain is, went through this hype curve. Some say it's now in the trough of disillusionment. I think it's just in the trough, frankly. So the problem with blockchain is it's an interesting technology if you're a technologist. It does some interesting, and there'll be some interesting applications for it. The initial use case was payments with Bitcoin. Bitcoin has probably now got such reputational damage that I think it's hard to come back from, and it's really an investor product anyway. And you've got various companies looking at using it for payments, but the question is, what are they trying to solve for? They're not trying to solve for speed, because blockchain is by definition slower than a regular payment system because you've got to distribute your data everywhere. They're not really solving for trust because I don't think people don't trust that your money's not going to get where it goes to, whether you're using Visa's rails or MasterCard's rails or Swift's rails. People know that money will get to the end place. Where you are seeing use cases, people sending money into difficult to reach jurisdictions. So I want to send money into China or South Korea or Brazil, where there are restrictions and cross-border is hard to do. And the trouble with that is they're basically trying to circumvent currency restrictions or liquidity rules. And at some point, they're going to get clamped down. So it's regulatory arbitrage using a different technology, but regulators will catch up. It might take them a couple of years to do so, but we've already seen in South Korea how the government's made moves to shut down on blockchain. So blockchain's interesting. I think it's great technology, but I just don't think the use case is in payments.
Well, Todd, certainly some things to be looking forward to there. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thanks for coming.
And thank you for watching.